In this video, brought to you by GameFour, I'm going to tell you about how to get back into the wargaming hobby after a bit of a break, or a long break. We all have that friend. Frequently that friend seems to send me messages through comments on YouTube, through email, through Facebook messages and stuff like that. But you all know this person as well, not specifically one person. This person who says, you know, last time I painted or played or anything was a year ago, taking this long break, maybe 2 years ago, maybe it's been 15 or 20 years. I get messages from folks who are like, hey, you know, I haven't done this in 20 years and now I'm getting back into it. And number one, there's nothing wrong with taking a break, and it's great when you come back. We're all happy to have you. I'm happy to have you. You will find that things are different depending on how long the break is, and we'll get into that. But the thing that is, I think, key, that when I'm talking to people who are getting back in after a long break, the thing that is key is that you have to understand why you're getting back in and kind of make sure you're doing it properly for you. Now, that's frankly a touch cryptic, but one of the most important things when you're getting back into a hobby of any kind is to sit down and figure out why it is you left in the first place. Now, if you left because life got difficult, you had some kids, or you got a sick family member, or you got sick, or your job changed, or you moved away, or any kind of thing like that, that's not on you. That's not your fault. None of this is actually going to be your fault. Let me just make that completely clear. But that is a reason outside of the hobby. That is just life being life. That's just time getting in the way. You want to sit and build and paint and play and whatnot, and life is like, no, that's not what your path is currently right now. You've got to do this or that or the other thing. It happens to many people, most people, honestly, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if the reason that you quit was because you didn't enjoy it, then you might want to take just another good think about it before you decide to start moving forward. If you stopped the hobby, you stopped wargaming, you stopped building, painting, whatever, just completely cold turkey, done. Number one, if you sold all your stuff as well, it's going to be a bit of a road to climb. If you didn't sell your stuff, but it's been a very, very long time, more than, say, 10 years, you're going to find that probably a lot of your paints have dried. You're going to find that a lot of your models are out of date or something like that, which is not the end of the world. They still work. It's different than like in video games where they're like, hey, we shut off all the servers and you can't even log in anymore and this game won't play. That's one option. You can still play with old metal models, which kind of looks like, they all kind of look like lumps, or whatever, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But you will also be looking at the new stuff probably online and being like, wow, that's very nice looking. And you'll have to make those decisions. But if the reason that you left is because you didn't enjoy it, then you should probably, honestly, before you start buying a whole bunch of stuff, take a good think about like, well, why do I think I'm going to enjoy it this time? How did your life change? How did things go from, yeah, I don't like this because I want to do something else? And again, this is internal, not external. If something changed in your job and you had to move or you got kids or whatever the deal was, that's obviously kind of the thing that made you have to stop the thing that you enjoyed. But if you just stopped the thing you enjoyed and it wasn't an external thing, it wasn't time constraints or anything along those lines or money, it was just, I don't enjoy doing it, so I stopped, then it's not that we don't welcome you back. Absolutely. I'm just saying you should probably think real hard before you pull the trigger and start buying a bunch of paints and brushes and models and all that kind of stuff. Marketing is a hell of a thing. And I say this as a person who kind of works in marketing. But there are times when I look at stuff that I kind of used to do and then stopped doing, and I see a YouTube video or I see cool, ads, or I mainly just watch YouTube these days, honestly, so it's not like I'm seeing stuff on television too much. But I see something about something that I used to be interested in, and there's a new technology, a new feature, a new whatever, and I was just kind of like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And then I need to think and go, but the reason I stopped doing that was because of X, Y, and Z. It's important to understand that if you quit doing a hobby because you stopped enjoying it, you may not enjoy it again just because you want to pick it up later on because you saw a cool new kit or, contrast paints. Oh, this is a new great way to paint. I can do it really super fast now. Well, maybe, and they're not bad, some of them. But the fact is, you have to understand that you need to take a good long look before you start, pulling out the check card to buy a whole bunch of paints and brushes and all that kind of stuff. Because people change. They do. But not in a lot of different ways. There are certain ways that people change. We get tubbier, that kind of thing. We lose our hair. And there are things that we do emotionally and mentally that do change as well. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times if the reason that you got out of the hobby is because you didn't like the hobby, you probably might not like it anymore now. If the reason you got out before was because you hated metal models and you just hated working with them and cutting them and stuff like that, and now everything's plastic and you're like, hurrah, it's 20 years later, everything's plastic, cool. That's probably not a bad idea. But if it's a situation of just trying to figure out, well, maybe I'll just try it again, baby steps. Baby steps would be very important in that situation. Now you're probably saying, Uncle Adam, but you're always trying to get people into the hobby. You're always trying to teach people how to get into the hobby. And it sounds here like you're telling people to get away from the hobby. I'm telling people who quit the hobby because they didn't like it to take a good long look before they leap back in again. This is basically just me trying to save you money, effort, time, that kind of stuff. And to think about it. Again, like I said, if it was external stuff that made it so you couldn't do it before, well, then if that external stuff changed, then you should definitely jump back in. If that's what you've been really wanting to do, absolutely come back in. But again, don't necessarily jump in with both feet. If life got in the way and made it so you couldn't be in the hobby for a while, even if it was only for like a year, if it was like a year, you probably held on to stuff. Your paints are probably even still pretty good, depending on the company, depending on how well you sealed them, that kind of stuff. Your brushes are probably fine, depending on how you stored them. If you stored them upside down on the bristles, like in a pop can filled with gasoline, those are bad brushes. You should throw them away or something. But generally, like in shorter periods of time, year, 2 years, those things, they keep, and most of your models are probably still good in some fashion or another. And in that situation, if you're thinking about getting back into the hobby, I would, number one, tell you to start by watching a bunch of YouTube. And I'm not just saying that as a self-serving YouTuber. I'm saying learn about what's changed even in the last couple of years and start to learn and figure things out. But don't just do that and then you have to move forward. If you're really interested, watch some videos. And if you're still interested, then you need to actually start doing and not just watching. I made a video about this last year about the 10-90 rule, where you spend like maybe 10% of your time watching, and you should then try to spend 90% of your time actually doing, and the reasons why that's important. Pachow. And it is when you are starting to ramp up and get back into things. If you've only been gone a while, then go back through your models that you have. And unless you're a much, much, much better person than I am, I bet you have some that are unpainted. And then, start working on some of those. Start going through your paints. If you find any that are kind of weird and dried out and stuff like that, maybe replace a couple of those. Start getting back into it. Watch some videos. Maybe pick a project and sort of stick with it a bit and see what happens. And if you do really start to enjoy it and get back into it, and the external stuff, the time, the people, and all that kind of stuff aren't getting in your way, then you can ramp up from there and start to go, you get this stuff done and you start doing some other stuff. Maybe you start buying into some new accessories that weren't out, 2 years ago. Maybe you get into some techniques you haven't done before. Enamel washes, for one. I've been getting into those recently. You might see some of that stuff on Instagram, or you might see some of that stuff on Facebook, or any of those online places where people share pictures of their models, and you're like, I like that. That's really cool. Those types of things can help spur you along and to keep you moving forward once you're sort of easing back into the hobby. If you've been gone a lot longer than that, then even if you held on to your stuff, you're going to want to make some decisions. You may look at the models that you've had from 15 years ago, and if it's a game that's still around and it's like a model system that is tied to the game, let's say something like Warhammer, well, you're going to look at it and go, okay, do I still want to play with these old models? Did they change the faction a lot and not interested anymore? Do that kind of research. Again, predominantly online, YouTube, blogs, that kind of stuff. Find out how things have changed. If I had taken a break back in 5th edition of 40K when I first started, and then something else got in the way, I would come back and be like, well, I'm certainly not going to take Tau, because Tau are garbage. Well, since 5th edition, things have changed. Tau are not necessarily garbage in any way, shape, or form anymore. But back when I was playing Tau in 5th edition, I was technically playing with a 4th edition codex because that's all that was available at the time, and not great. So these things will change, sometimes even over a short period of time. Remember, I think that Age of Sigmar's only been out, maybe 5 years? So if you were playing 10 years ago and you were into fantasy, it's a very different game. The bases are around now, like all these different types of things. So understand that and, try to figure out like what you've got, if you still got stuff from back in the day. If you don't have anything, you got rid of everything because you needed the money or you just didn't want to store it or keep it or whatever, and you didn't think you were ever coming back. There's nothing wrong with that. People do it all the time. In that situation, then I would do a little bit of research and see what you want to get into now. If you were a fantasy player back in the day, you might be interested in just starting out, just dipping your toe with something like Warhammer Underworlds, which is a great kind of there's fantasy models, it's Age of Sigmar type models. You can use them in Age of Sigmar, but it's a smaller game, it's a smaller investment, smaller war bands. You can paint a little bit and get back into it. I would tell you to practice. That's a big deal. If you've still got some old models, practice on those with some of the new techniques that you read about when you start doing some research and see what kind of cool stuff you can come up with. Try new paints. Try, maybe get an airbrush if you're interested down the road. I wouldn't start off necessarily being like, yep, going to have to go out and buy an airbrush. Unless you used to use one back in the day and you sold it, then definitely the airbrushes these days are spectacular. The concept is that we always want people to come back into the hobby. Well, I do, at least. Not everybody, I guess, does, but I like to see when people come back into the hobby because it's a great hobby for all of the reasons that I frequently talk about on this channel. But jumping back in with both feet is not necessarily a great idea, specifically if the reason you left was because you didn't like the hobby. And also kind of because even if you left because of external reasons, you don't want to go in all in, full to start because, like I said, people do change over time, and you may have changed from back when you used to enjoy it, and maybe now you don't. So keep an eye on it, think about it, know yourself, and don't just leap in because the marketing looks cool and the box art's great and all that kind of stuff. Think about it and move slowly, but come back and have some fun if that's what you're into. Do you find it hard to find gaming groups, people to play with, gaming events, or even like local stores near where you live or maybe someplace that you travel to? Well, there's this app and it's called GameFour. I've talked about it before. Full disclosure, I'm one of the designers and it's a thing that I work on. It's part of my day job and I really love it. And I would like it a lot if you would also try it out as well. GameFour is available for Android, iOS. It's also available on the web if you don't have a smartphone or if you don't want to pull it out when you're at work or something, but you're on a computer. You can totally use that too. It is available for looking up game events that are near you. They're posted by stores or clubs or individuals. You can also look at looking for players. Looking for players section is a kind of like that cork board at the back of the game shop where someone puts a little 3x5 card or a post-it note that says, hey, we're looking for a cleric for our D&D game on Thursday nights. Call Jerry. It's like that, except the thing is that instead of having to call Jerry and have Jerry now have your phone number and kind of being weird about that, you can message completely through the app and there's no sharing of email addresses. There's no sharing of any of that kind of stuff. We are very big into privacy. We don't ever share your email address with anybody. We don't share your location. We don't track your locations. Like all that stuff that Facebook does, we don't do that. I don't even know how to spell algorithm. So, that's also good. We've got a store finder database that has over 6,800 stores worldwide. So any place you go, you can pull out that phone and find the closest game store to where you are, which is a spectacular thing. We've also got groups and clubs support, so you can find local groups and clubs near you, and also convention support now. We've just added a whole new group of conventions for the 2020 year, and if you've got a convention, you can list it in our database for free, so people can see it from basically anywhere in the world. This is a global, worldwide app, and it's been available for a while now. We've had it out for nearly 2 years. We just added a new feature, which is called badging. It's kind of like achievements, in video games where like you do a thing and you get a special thing on your profile and people know, except that if you get a certain badge, which is the one where either you sign up another friend of yours to GameFour, with their permission, of course, they use your referral code. Or if someone else signs you up and you use their referral code, if that happens, you then get entered for that month's $100 Game Store giveaway. You and the person you signed up both will win a $100 gift card to your friendly local game store, and you can spend it on whatever cool stuff you want, paint, brushes, whatever you're going to do. But that's the idea. Now, if you don't have any friends who use GameFour right now, but you still want that badge, where someone referred you, use my referral code right here. If we win, you and I, then you'll get the $100, and I'll take the $100 and give it to Extra Life, the charity. So do that, get yourself that badge, but then you can start signing up your friends, getting them to use your referral code, or you can put it on Twitter, or you can throw it up on your YouTube channel, or whatever you want to do. And every time someone signs up, you get another entry into that month's contest. So download the app, iOS, Android, it's on the web as well. It's all free. It is for not just wargamers, it's for board gamers, role-playing gamers, collectible card gamers, and anybody that likes tabletop games. So go to www.imgamefour. There's a link down below in the description, and check it out, or look in your Android store or iOS app thingy and just type in GameFour. You'll find it.